Hi everyone, this is Gary Wilson and welcome to this week's live webinar for the Investor Agent Training Program. And for those who've been through the flipping program and the rental program, welcome aboard also. And again, this is being recorded, so everyone will get a recording of it the very next day. For those of you who are new, welcome aboard, welcome to the program. And the way we do things is we give everyone a few minutes to log in, and then we start the recording. And we go over just some logistics first. First thing is this: I want to do a intro for those of you who are new. It's a live webinar. You can type questions in your question box all you want. We'll stay on. We'll stay as long as you guys want to. We'll stay on board here. Okay. From time to time, we will unmute people, and we will have live audio. And we try to keep that at you and I. If you're the one that I am unmuting, just have two of us at a time, so it's a regular conversation and everyone else can hear. It doesn't work to tap in more than two people. It gets too chaotic. Okay. In any case, a little bit of a review. We're still into the marketing series. Okay. So for those of you who are new, you're going to get access to the member section of the website, which is going to give you access to a lot more information and tools, and also access to all of the previously recorded webinars. They're logged out there on the database and cataloged by subject matter. So what I recommend is that you stay on the webinars each week. If you can't make one, just get the recording and listen to it or watch it the very next day. You can use there's an online tool you can use. It's free, that will convert the webinar into MP3, which gives you just the audio portion, and therefore you can listen to it in your cars, for example. Okay, but in any case, we started off the year going into the modules, Module 1 and Module 2 particularly. We didn't spend a lot on Module 3, I don't recall. And then we get into the marketing at the end of January. And we've been going through all of the different marketing techniques and campaigns since the end of January. So what we're doing right now, guys, is we're in the second week of a 4-week series on how to carry out a classroom scenario with your clients. Okay, the classroom scenario is considered an advanced technique, and with rare exception, you should always do the workshop first if you have a desire to do the classroom scenario. And at the end of this 4-week series, you know why we really advocate that you do the classroom series, and you'll know also why you start off with the workshop first. The workshop is a building block for the classroom scenario. Okay, so we've gone through all the marketing. So if you're brand new, I highly recommend, when you get access to the member section, go back beginning. Actually, it's the Tuesday between Christmas and New Year's. Listen to that or watch it, whichever the case is, and go through as many as you can, as fast as you can. Because we're going to go over everything that we have in the program, and the marketing in particular. You're going to hear all of the methods explained, and so it's going to be audio visual. You can listen to and take notes, and because it's a recording, you download it on your computer. It's there forever. You can keep it forever, but more importantly, you can start it and stop it as often as you like as you take notes throughout the webinar. Okay, so I highly recommend that. If you don't think you can get to everything, go ahead and download them and get to them as you can. You'll hear everything described in detail. Sometimes we have people on live, but in any case, where we are now is into the classroom scenario. And the classroom scenario is a 4-part series. Last week we went over the first class that you hold in the 4-part series with your students, if you're going to have obviously new investors coming to you. Last week focused on flipping. And we didn't get into a lot of flipping detail, because the nature of the webinar last week was more about how do you administer that class that's talking about instructing people on flipping. Okay, and some of you right now are probably wondering, holy smokes, am I going to be in over my head? And the answer is, for you right now, that may be the case. But again, you're never going to do a classroom scenario right out of the gate. Typically, you're going to be into the game a little bit. You'll certainly be through Module 4, and also we can't make you do this, but we really want to have you do the beginning or the standard or basic workshop scenario first. It's a great way to learn the ropes and how do you put on a workshop, and once you learn the ropes, then you're better equipped to put on a classroom scenario. We've had several students do it with great success. We've had people who are not even our students who have done it, and we've interviewed them, and they tell you this is a great way to develop clients and generate revenue and for you, as well as wealth and income for them. Okay, so last week I highly recommend, if you haven't, that you listen to that one. That's the first in a 4-part series, and that again is on flipping. Tonight's webinar, we're going to focus on the second class in the 4-part series, and the second class is devoted to helping people understand rentals. You know, how do they find them? How do they analyze them? And more importantly, how do you work with them in a way that's profitable for them and profitable for you? So we're going to go through a set of 12-step set of instructions at the end of the class tonight that you're going to rehearse, or you're going to recite and practice multiple times on yourself before you attempt to use it with the client. Okay, it's a behavioral skill as opposed to an academic skill. A lot of what we teach are academic skills, but some of them are behavioral skills, and to master a behavioral skill, it just simply takes repetition, guys. It's just a matter of practicing, putting one foot in front of the other, and getting out there and executing. You literally just take action. You're not going to get it the first time, but you'll likely get it on the third or fourth time. Okay, so not that complex. It's just a habit forming thing. So in any case, that's enough for the review. What we're going to do tonight again is focus on rentals. Okay, and for those of your clients who want to focus on rentals, now my recommendation is you have your students, your clients, that is, who are interested in learning, to come to all 4 of your classes. Each one is a different subject. Okay, and it'll help them determine more precisely if they actually have a preference of rentals over flips or flips over rentals, for example. By the way, the 3rd class is going to be on wholesaling. I'm not a personal fan of wholesaling, although I am required to teach it. And that may be an option for your clients, and I'm going to explain to you how you actually profit by working with wholesalers. Okay, these are people who are simply assigning the contract, selling the contract for a contract fee, or assignment fee they call it, or a wholesale fee. There is a way to work with them that's very profitable, and I'll explain that to you once we get through that section next week. The final section is going to be on in the field experience. You're actually going to take your clients out into the field looking at properties, and you may have to do it in 2 different days. One day we'll focus on you're looking at rentals with your clients. The other day we'll focus on looking at flips with your clients who want to flip homes. Okay, so for tonight, you can see on my screen I have the page in the book and the manual. It's the physical page is 77, and for you it's actually, it's going to be page 69. Okay, and you can see when it comes to rentals, there's really 2 ways to acquire rentals. All right, and I'm going to describe this to you because you need to be able to describe this to your clients. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because you can certainly read this yourself, but I want to go over it so you have at least a broad understanding. And then when you're holding this class, which is class number 2, you'll be able to more effectively describe the 2 ways to buy rentals. All right, the first way is what we call turnkey, and turnkey is just about exactly what it sounds like. What that means is you and your clients are looking at properties that are already in service. In other words, they don't need to be remodeled, maybe not much, at least anyways. Perhaps you need a little bit. They could be in need of a little bit of TLC, but more cosmetic, nothing substantial, nothing systematic. In other words, all the systems work well: heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical, roofing, etc. Cosmetic would be more along the lines of painting and carpeting, landscaping outside. Okay, so in the case of turnkey, for the most part, they don't need much work. I mean, they might need a little. Again, they might need a little bit of painting, a little bit of carpeting, a little bit of landscaping, but beyond that, nothing else. No new kitchens, no new bathrooms, no new systems. Some of the benefits are this: when it comes to turnkey properties, they literally are producing income on day one. So the day your client signs on the dotted line on the HUD-1 sheet and acquires the property, they are credited with rent beginning the very next day. It depends on some states will do it that day, some states the very next day. Okay, but the bottom line is those properties are literally generating a revenue from the moment the new person takes ownership of the property, which is a big benefit to your clients, of course, because they start making money right away. It's also a big benefit because the lenders, if you have a client who would like to buy a rental property and the property is already in service, it's already up and running, it's rented, it's showing an income, the lenders love those properties. Matter of fact, they prefer those properties when it comes to people buying rentals. Okay, so, and the other benefit is that typically on a mortgage, the borrower, the mortgager, their first payment is not due until the month after they close on the property. The month they close, well, they'll have some interest due, but that'll be rolled into the loan. Okay, so what that means is, let's say your client purchases a property on, let's say now the 12th of the month. Okay, they will receive the benefit of the remainder of the rents from the 13th through the 31st of May. And then they'll be able to collect June's rents and then make June's mortgage payment. So essentially they can put a little cushion in the kitty prior to their first mortgage payment. All right. The other thing too is lenders will typically give you the best rates and terms on rental properties that are already in service. So if you go to a lender with a property that's empty, they're going to be a little bit skeptical. They're not going to like it very much, particularly if it needs a lot of work, which we'll talk about next. Okay, but back to turnkey. Most of your clients, the ones that we encourage you to work with, professionals, the business owners, are typically going to want to buy these better properties. They're going to want to buy the turnkey properties. Okay, the ones who have lower incomes, the buyers that is, are typically, they're the ones that will be drawn more towards the other properties that are not turnkey. But the folks who are well established, they've got a great business, maybe they're a chiropractor, maybe they're a dentist, maybe they're an engineer who has their own electrical contracting company. They typically will be more interested in the better properties. And we like working with those kind of clients because those properties are easier to finance. Most other investors will ignore them because most other investors are doing things the hard way by looking for the cheap properties. Okay, so in any case, now not everyone can start off buying these types of properties. A lot of investors have to start off buying the less expensive properties, or the properties that need a lot of remodeling. And I get it. Believe me, I was one of them for a while. Okay, but the point is, if you're investing yourself in rental properties, we want you to eventually get to a cash basis and get to where you can buy these better properties. And we definitely encourage you to focus on those types of clients with your business right now, with your brokerage business. Okay, the second type of property is where you buy properties that are wholesale. What we mean by that is not buying from another investor or you're not buying a contract. That's a different type of wholesale. What we mean by wholesale here is you're buying at a drastically discounted price because the property typically needs to be remodeled. Okay, and the good news is about these types of properties, there's pros and cons to everything. The benefit with buying less expensive rental properties, and they're being less expensive because they need to be remodeled, particularly larger projects we're talking about here. In other words, it's not just cosmetics. They may need new electric panel. They may need new toilets and tubs and sinks and things like that. Okay, they may need more work than meets the eye. The bottom line is you can buy a rental property inexpensively that way and fix up the common areas first, and then fix up the first unit so that it's presentable and rentable in marketable condition. In other words, rent that unit out, then get the next unit up and running, get that unit rented out, and do that as many times as you need to until the property is fully in service. And then your client has the option to either keep it, okay, basically buying and holding, or actually sell it for profit because they've dramatically increased the value of the property by not only remodeling it one unit at a time, but they've also now got higher rents coming in and it's fully occupied. So it's kind of a unique strategy. It's sort of a hybrid of a flip, but it's still technically a rental. In any case, back to the scenario here. The bottom line is this: you need to be able to understand the difference between the two purchasing methods, so that you can present that to your clients in class, your students in class, and be able to explain the pros and cons to both. What are the benefits and what are the drawbacks? You can see that in certain economies, one method may work better than another, right? A great way, the last method I just described, which is buy properties that are in distress and then fix them up and refinance, is that will work well in a declining economy, okay? And by the way, that's another benefit to buying a property like that, is if your clients can purchase it on a line of credit or purchase it with cash, and then when they're done remodeling, okay, they will not have a lien on the property. Then what they can do is go to the bank and say, look, I've got this property with no liens on it. I own it, and it's rented and showing an income. I'd like to place a new mortgage on it. And in this case, it'll be a first mortgage. Even though you're technically refinancing, it's a first mortgage because there's no other lien on the property. Yes, you may have used another source of funding, like a borrowing from a 401k or using a line of credit that's secured with other properties to purchase this property. We understand that, but that doesn't mean it creates a lien on this property. So that's the point I was trying to make. So that's another benefit, is that it's a great way to pick up properties that are in distress, but don't keep them in distress. Fix them up so they're better properties, then go out and refinance them and keep them rented, or you can sell it for profit, okay? Sell it for capital gains. So in any case, those are the two basic types of purchasing methods when it comes to acquiring rentals. And I want you to understand this and read this information. It's in your Module 2 of the training program. Read it, study it, practice it, and then when you hold the classroom scenario, you'll be able to speak with more authority and basically walk the talk, okay? And if you've bought properties yourself, then you're in even better shape. Not a requirement, obviously, but you certainly want to keep that in mind, okay? Okay, let's see. I'm going to go on to the next subject here. The next subject is the ratio. So one of the things I'm not going to cover tonight, guys, by the way, is in Module 1, we go over how do you identify the best areas for buying the right kind of properties. You can review that on your own, and you want to do that because you want to be able to explain that in your class that you're putting on. I'm not going to review it tonight because we already cover that in a module, which is Module 1, and you can study it on your own. Also listen to the recorded webinars that cover the same subject. But the bottom line is you do need to understand, grading of properties, A, B, and C, okay? And generally we like to buy rental properties that are in the B- and C+ areas, all right? And again, review Module 1, it'll go into a lot more detail on that. You just need to understand that so that you can explain that to your clients, all right? Another thing you can do, and you should do, obviously, oh, by the way, back here, there is a ratio that you want to remember when it comes to acquiring rental properties and those of your clients, obviously. And that is, you should be looking in areas that their ratio of tenant occupancy is between 1/3 and 2/3. In other words, the property is no less than 1/3 tenant occupied, or the neighborhood is no less than 1/3 tenant occupied, and no more than 2/3 tenant occupied. That's the ratio. Now, there are exceptions, and here's a couple of exceptions. Whenever you can invest in an area, or wherever your tenants can invest in an area that's very near hospital or university systems or college systems, those are great areas to buy rentals. Even if it's 90% tenant occupied, the fact that they're around hospital systems and university systems makes it a very desirable area for owning rentals. Okay, that's the big exception. Other than that, though, it's generally going to be between 1/3 and 2/3 tenant occupied. One other possible exception would be if you're within a couple blocks of shopping. Obviously, you can go beyond the 2/3 renter occupied ratio because those areas are great for attracting tenants. Okay, so in any case, always remember that. One of the things you want to do with your classes, by the way, is bring in samples of properties. All right, here's a sample in your training manual, 3834 Brighton. This is a typed out description of the property, how it was purchased, how much, what was done to it, what this basically, by the way, this was a purchase for a low price, remodel it, and refinance at a higher price. So the property was worth a lot more money than when it was first purchased because it was remodeled, but it was certainly rented out. Okay, it showed a cash flow. All right, and if you don't have one of these, don't worry. You can use this as an example in your class. But more importantly, you want to bring in samples of properties from your MLS system, samples of rentals that are active, samples of rentals that have been sold, okay? Because you're going to use those and you're going to go over those samples in the class. You're going to basically use the classroom as an opportunity for exercising the material. Now tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the basic cash flow formula with you, because obviously you can do that on your own, but I want to make sure I go over it so you understand how you do that yourselves in front of your class. We're going to touch on the rental property reporter, and we're going to touch on the opportunity evaluator, but those are slightly more advanced, and you can practice those on your own, okay? But for right now, you want to make sure you bring in samples of properties. You also want to bring in what we call the cash flow worksheet, which is this right here, okay? Cash flow worksheet, we'll describe that here in a moment. You also want to bring in your laptop computer so that you can go over rental property reporter, okay? And that's this right here. This is exactly what it looks like. So this is online. Everyone here on the class here has a link to this. It's just basically an online calculator, an online analyzer. And the good news is it has a lot of capability. I mean, you basically can type in all your basic numbers, purchase price, your mortgage information, your rental information, okay, and what cap rate you're currently experiencing or enjoying based on the cash flow and the purchase price, okay. You can also, they make assumptions about property management, taxes, insurance, so forth and so on, okay. But the bottom line is this. Once you understand the basics of this, and everybody can practice on this, it's free as part of the program, all right? We give it to you online. I would say practice with these calculators yourself. You can't do any harm because they're just basically calculators. All the math is done for you, and what you want to do is type in different figures. You know, the commission, annual appreciation, your supposed tax rate, capital gains tax rate, all that stuff you type in, and it gives you the results. And again, up here, purchase price, initial term of your loan, interest rate on a loan, all that stuff, they're variables, and you type them in. And the reason you want to do this in practice is you want to do some what-if scenarios, okay? So what I recommend is when you put on your second class, the class that focuses on rentals in this case, bring your computer with you, bring your laptop with you, and make sure you have access at the library, wherever you are, okay? Again, you'll see then here, all these drop-downs are going to give you different results and different calculations. You can, like, cash flows and return on investment details, yearly financial projections, table details, year-end balances. All these are drop-down menus that you click on, and you fill in the blanks, and it fills them out. Okay, now another one, and you guys have all seen this for the most part in the Keller Williams classes, this is called Opportunity Evaluator. Whoops, sorry, let me reduce my panel here for just 1 second. Bring that back in the full view. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Okay, that's it right there. So again, I'm not going to go over this in detail, because every one of you has this in your material. You've got the original Excel spreadsheet delivered to you in an attachment, okay? And you should practice with it. Practice with it on your computer. And then what you can do is print off your practice sheet. So let's say you had samples of properties, samples of rental properties that were for sale, or samples of rental properties that have already sold. Go ahead and type in all the values on this spreadsheet. Your purchase information, your mortgage information, okay, mortgage information, your rents, okay, your rental information, and then all your expenses. And you can see this is easily printed off. You fill this out and you print it out, and you take that with you to class. So you take this with you. By the way, you can also do this on your computer. You can do a live demonstration of this Excel spreadsheet right in your classroom on your laptop computer. I recommend that also. Okay, it's a great way to inspire and inform and educate your students. So bring that in, bring in your computer so you can show them this, the rental property reporter. But the one thing you want to do live on the spot with them and have them follow along with you is to do this cash flow worksheet. Very basic, very simple. Now, before we get into this, let me check for questions here real quick. So hang on 1 second, because it's now 7:30. So let's see. Let me go back here. That's okay. Aranda says I'm getting malware warning when try to pull up the rental property reporter. Let's see. Hang on 1 second, Rhonda. Let me do one thing here. Let me go here. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can bring it up. Let's go down here. Okay, podcast. Let's see if I can find it. Melissa data, how to make a machine, Launchpad. I know I've got it on here because I've used it before. Maybe it's down here. So if I can't find it real quick, let's see. Real estate. Here it is. Real estate investment calculator. Okay. So, oh, you know what, Rhonda? I tell you what. You should be seeing this on your screen now. That's right. This company, All Property, bought that. They bought the program. They bought the business. And it's now called allpropertymanagement.com/resources/rental property investment calculator.html. So I'm going to give everybody a second I'm going to hold this up on the screen so you guys can write that down or do a screenshot on your computer that'll capture this. This is the new URL, but you can see it's still the basic same calculator. You put in, let's just type in current value. Let's go 200,000. All right, and then cash investment. Let's say you put down 40,000. Whoops, that's percentage. Sorry, 20%. Mortgage rate. Let's call it 5%. Monthly rent. Let's call that $2,000 per month. And again, so we'll leave all that stuff alone. But you can see, Rhonda, this is. I don't know if I put enough stuff in there. Let's see what happens. We'll left a lot blank, but essentially you can see the returns. So it does work. Just make sure you write this down or do a screenshot. allpropertymanagement.com/resources/rental-investment-calculator.html. So Beverly, when you listen to this, if you could make a note of that, let's get this out to everybody. All right, let's get back to the material and back to the questions. So Rhonda, hopefully that helps you right there. Let's see, Sherry. Hi, Gary. Is there another ROI calculator that we can use? Both Google and Mozilla are telling me this. Okay, so I think I just answered both your questions. Rhonda says, I got it. Okay, great. Yeah, apologize about that. We're going to get the material updated and we'll get that sent out to you guys. Okay, so back to the classroom scenario. What you want to do in the classroom, guys, is I wouldn't get in too much into the rental property reporter or the opportunity evaluator. I would focus initially on this basic, simple cash flow worksheet. Okay, it's all in your material. It's just there's no calculator behind it. It's just a simple Word document. But all you do is you print these off, take them to class, have them fill in the gross rents, because you remember you're going to have sample properties. Have them fill in all the known expenses, taxes, insurance, utilities, et cetera, add up all your expenses. And then obviously your net operating income is your gross rents minus your expenses, and that gives you your NOI, net operating income, all right? And the cash flow is simply your net operating income minus your mortgage payment, in this case, principal and interest, because you've already factored in taxes and insurance, right? The most simple formula you could possibly give them, but it's a great way to break the ice. It's a great way to get them comfortable with determining the value of a rental property. All right, and it's a great for them to determine, obviously, in this case, cash flow on any particular example that you bring in. And by the way, once they have net operating income, once they have cash flow, they can then determine some of the ratios. All right, cash on cash return, cap rate, that type of thing. All right, and I'm not going to cover those tonight. We'll cover those in a separate module down the road when we dig into module 2 in more detail with you guys. All right. So in any case, the bottom line is you're bringing in these calculators, you're bringing in spreadsheets. There's the rental property reporter again, excuse me. All right, you're bringing all this information to class with sample properties so that you can go over them with your clients, okay? And that's essentially all you do in the classroom. You just basically, it's hands-on. They're actually practicing with real properties using real formulas, and they're going to get familiar with how to use that basic cash flow worksheet. All right. Now, with the Opportunity Evaluator, by the way, let me go back here for a second. You could either bring in your computer and demonstrate this live on your computer, or just print some off ahead of time. Fill them out and print them off and bring them to class. Okay. You be the judge of that. All right. So, all right, let me do a quick pause here again before I get going, because we're going to get into the second part of this. And I want to make sure, okay, looks like we're caught up. All right, good. I just want to make sure we're caught up, and I want to make sure we got through everything so far before we get into this, all right? One more thing, by the way. Sorry, we'll get into this in a second, I promise. In the classroom, as you have your students going over the cash flow worksheet, going over the sample properties, what you want to do is you want to basically get them in a position where they start to discuss things between themselves. All right, you want to get that chatter going. You want to get the conversations going at the tables. All right, and one of the things you can do is, as you walk around, if you hear people talking about something they did, ask them to share their story. I would write that down, by the way. Ask the participants in your class, for those who've already done this before, maybe they did it and made a mistake. Maybe it didn't work for them. Or maybe their dad did it and it didn't work for them. Whatever the case is, get them to share their stories, okay? And here's what you do. Often people will bring up either one or two things. An example of a story where it worked, or an example of a story where it didn't work, or they heard that it didn't work. And what you want to do is get them to bring up as many details as possible, not dominate the class, but just give you enough information to where you can then ask for the other students to provide input. This is one of the most valuable things you can do, because it encourages your students to get involved and rely on their intuition and help provide solutions for the fellow students. Because if they're always dependent on you, they're never going to grow. You've got to get them to be follow their intuition, learn to ask what-if questions and how can I questions, and offer support for each other. And then you've got your community being formed. You've got your group being formed. Okay. In any case, so remember that. All right, now I'm going to let you look at this for a second. It's in your material. It's in Module 2. And we're going to go over this, because you're going to go over this with your students, all right? And once we go through this, you'll understand why we really encourage you to go over this multiple times with yourself and then practice with someone else before you ever do this in a classroom scenario, okay? Because once you explain this to your students in a classroom, the expectation is that this is how you're going to carry out your business going forward. And you absolutely will, because when you master this, you've really mastered the game. This is where the rubber meets the road. And when you're out there with your clients, if you follow this precisely, they're going to be more profitable, and you're going to make a lot more money, and you're not going to kill yourself doing it. Essentially, you're getting your clients involved in the analysis process of these properties, which is paramount to their success. The people who just say, just go find me a good deal, I can tell you, they may have some successes, but they're never going to be able to retire. They're going to always be chasing that dream and missing opportunities and never having any skin in the game. Your students are going to have skin in the game, okay? And here's one of the big reasons why. All right, so let's get started. Okay, first things first. This is assuming you've already had an interview with your client, or essentially they're a lead. They come in, you interview them. They become a prospect, okay, and then you set them up on searches. Now this is the point that we're at. You're at the point where you've had your interview, they're qualified, and they've demonstrated a readiness, willingness, and ability to take action. And one of the ways you do that is you have them follow up with you with an email from them to you, recapping your initial meeting with them. Okay, so let's just step back and go through that. All right, somebody calls you, they respond to your marketing. Okay, you want to set up a telephone conversation with them to go over their investment goals, and essentially what you're doing is you're establishing rapport and determining their needs and wants. All right. Now, during that initial interview, you obviously want to qualify them, and we've gone over this in the classes already. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but essentially you want to ask them what do they have in savings, what their credit rate is, and do they have an available business line of credit. That's called qualifying them. So you've interviewed them, now you're qualifying them, okay? You obviously want to get all of their contact information. If you don't already, you want to make sure you get their name, phone number, email address. I like to get a physical address too, to be honest with you. You don't have to, but it'd be nice, all right? Now, the next thing you do, it's not in here, but you should remember this. Before you set them up on their first search, what you want to do is first of all, make sure you have them send an email to you, okay, with a recap of your conversation. And then when they do that, then and only then do you send them the first set of listings based on their criteria. And you don't screen the listings. You just give them the listings because they're going to screen them, all right? Now, by the way, if you're curious, this was a very good point in time to get a buyer's agency agreement signed, all right? They're motivated. They've already demonstrated that they're going to work with you on your terms. They're going to send you an email recapping your conversation. And that's where you say, okay, here's a completed buyer's agency form. Please sign this and return to me. And then I'll work exclusively for you. And we will have a happy relationship. They'll make money and you make money. And then you set them up on their searches. Okay, so now we're at that point. So let's say their initial search results show 100 properties. 100 properties that look like they make good rentals, or 100, in this case it's all rentals, that is. Could be single family homes, could be duplexes, could be 3 units, could be 4 units, could be any and all of the above, could be a mixture of all those, okay? What I want you to do is I'm going to teach you for a moment. I'm just take a deep breath here. I'm going to teach you for a moment how you actually exercise this 12-step process, because I want you to do this for yourself first, and then you'll know how to do this for your clients. Okay, so the very first thing you do, guys, if you were my student, if you were my client, that is, I've set you up for a search. I'm going to have you go through all of the listings one at a time, and it's going to be done in multiple passes. Okay, the initial pass of 100 units is going to narrow that list down to 50 units. Okay, this is an example here. So let's say you got 100 listings. There's no way you're going to do a thorough analysis on 100 listings. There's no way you're going to do drive-bys on 100 listings, all right? So you've got to cut that list down, and we're going to cut it in half initially by doing this next step here, all right? So here's the step, all right? Somebody has to be knowledgeable in your area, either you or your client. I would like to think it's you. Knowledgeable in the as far as what are reasonable rents, and knowledgeable as far as what are reasonable values. In this case, that's more important. What are the reasonable values for your area? Property values, that is, okay? So you're looking at listing price initially, all right? Now, if the list price on that listing, the asking price on the listing, is at or above what you believe to be fair market value of that type of property for the area, you're going to discard that property. It's going to go in the no pile. Okay, you're not going to spend any more time on it. If it's listed at or above market value, you drop it. Okay, that's the initial pass. That's going to cut your listings in half, the ones that you're going to be spending more time on. Okay, so far so good. Okay, good. So you do that, and by the way, if you're wondering, well, how do you know what market value is? You have to determine that by doing your own research. In about 10 minutes, in any given area, a zip code, for example, or a neighborhood, you can determine what are the average values by looking at prior solds of similar properties. You can also go to your county's tax assessment database and look for properties that are rentals, by the way, in that area. It's easy to do. See what those values are according to the county, and also look and see if they've sold recently, even if it's off the MLS. They may have sold and not on the MLS, all right? So essentially, you're looking for data that's going to tell you what is the true market value for that type of property in that area. You need to do that ahead of time, and it won't take that long either. And once you know it, you know it forever, all right? So in any case, you're comparing the list price of all these listings with that value. You drop the ones that are priced too high. Then you're left with maybe half of the properties. And here's what we do next, all right? You start going through looking at photographs of the properties on the listings. You're looking at the size of the lot, the size of the rooms, and other characteristics. What you're doing is you're now using your powers of observation to eliminate the ones that look like they're in really bad shape, okay? The ones that also have small bedroom sizes, or let's say there's a 3-bedroom rental and there's no dining room, all right? That could be a problem because a 3-bedroom rental is generally going to be rented to a family, somebody with children, and you better believe they're going to want at least a dining room, if not a den, in their rental, okay? So in any case, you're going through looking at the properties now based on the physical characteristics of the properties, and you're going to cut your list in half again. Now you're going to be down to 25 properties, all right? And this is all an example that we're going through. So in this example, we go from 100 to 50, and then 50 to 25, all right? And the second wave, going from 50 to 25, is based on the physical characteristics of the properties, okay? If you feel like you're a little bit fuzzy right now, guys, don't worry about it. Remember, you get the recording the very next day. Just replay it or ship off the audio or replay the audio as you're driving. I promise you, repetition is the mother of learning, and repetition is the mother of success, okay? Okay, that's round 2. Round 3 is now you're going to look at specific financial information on those properties. And more specifically, you're going to be looking at the income, the rents, okay, and of course expenses, but initially rents. So you want to look at the rents that are being advertised for that property. What are they renting those units for? Now these figures actually has a note right there. Note different areas will have vastly different pricing models and vastly different rental models to follow, okay? All right, so you need to understand not only what are the values of properties in your area, you also need to understand what are the reasonable rents that people are commanding for these similar type properties in this area. And you can do that very easily by going online and Googling rentals in the area. You can go to Craigslist, see what people are advertising for rentals. There's a number of sources. You can also find rentals on your MLS system, okay? The bottom line is you got to know pretty certainly within a range what the 2-bedroom apartments rent for in a particular neighborhood, all right? So what you're doing now is you're looking at those rents for these listed properties, for the remaining 25 properties. And you're going to see, are those rents high? Are they low? Are they right on target, okay? You're also going to look and see if there's a lot of vacancies. If you're helping a person buy a turnkey property, you definitely don't want to see a lot of vacancies, okay? Because they want turnkey. They want properties that are up and rented and in service and showing an income, okay? But the bottom line is you've got to understand the going rate for rents in your area, and it's very easy to determine. There's 300 million people in the United States and 30 million in Canada. That means there's a lot of rentals. So it'd be impossible for me to provide you average rental rates for every single market that we're in, because they do change gradually over time, and it's more important for you to know what those are than it is for me to know what those are, okay? I can tell you certain areas, but not the top 500 major metropolitan areas in the North America, okay? So you determine that, and you look at the ones that are listed on your property that you're looking at, the listing, determine that they make sense, and if they don't make sense, you might want to discard that. Or if they don't make sense and you think the property might make a good match, then call the other realtor and get more information and find out why are those rents so out of line with the other rents in the area, okay? In any case, you also want to look at expenses at this level and find out what are the expenses that they're advertising. and look and see if they're really high or they're really low, and again, ask questions. Why are they high or why are they low? But if you might have a great income property, but if the expenses are eating a huge hole in that income, it still might not make sense. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Now let me stop there for just a second, because that last step is a big step to follow, and I want to let you guys absorb that for a moment. I'll let you catch up on your notes and give you a chance to type in questions if you have questions. Okay. Okay. Now, by the way, I give examples of what rents may be and what per unit costs may be. 35,000 per unit. For a 3-bedroom. That's true in like Dayton, Ohio, and other areas that are on the lower end of the pricing spectrum. Okay. But you have to know what they are for San Francisco, for LA, for Toronto, for Orlando, for Sarasota, for Tampa, whatever the case is, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, all those areas we taught in, and they all have different rental models, okay? So anyways, but the point is at that level, this level here, you're now narrowing it down to maybe 10 properties, all right? It says here 10 to 15 properties. So, and also keep in mind, this is a great note. You have to understand that a turnkey property is going to look and be different than a property that needs to be rehabbed, all right? Pricing is going to be different. Rents could be different. So if you're looking for turnkey properties, you're obviously going to be, everything's going to look a certain way. The rents will be a certain value. On the rehab properties, a lot of times the rents will be projected, and they're not always accurate. You need to understand, again, what the rents are for your area. But again, you always think about what is it your client prefers, turnkey versus rehab. That's very important. As you do this multi-step process, you got to keep that in mind. That's the point I'm trying to make. Okay, you learn to trust your instincts. You're going to be developing your instincts, okay? And in your case, you're eventually going to be helping your clients develop their instincts, all right? The bottom line is this. You're going to be narrowing things down through a multi-step process. At the end of the day, you may have 10 to 15 properties, or you should have 10 to 15 properties to drive by, all right? And you're going to do that. Not you, but in this exercise, you're doing it, but in practice, when you're out there doing this classroom scenario, you're going to have your clients do the drive-bys, not you, all right? They're going to do the drive-bys, and they're going to narrow the list down further, because things may look good on paper. In other words, financially it may look good, but they go to look at the properties, and half of them they decide don't cut the mustard. And in fact, I would always tell you, always encourage your clients to get that final list down to 5 to 7 properties, 5 to 7 rentals that they're going to be looking at, okay? There's no way you can look at 10 or 14 rentals in a day. You can try it, and it's physically possible, but what happens is the human brain is incapable of retaining and compiling information on more than about 6 properties on average. Some people can do 7, some people it's 5. On average, it's 6 properties. So in any case, you've narrowed your list down, or in this case, your clients have narrowed the list down. You had them send you the final list of the ones they want to see. Again, 5 to 7 properties. You want to get the MLS numbers. I also tell them I want to check their homework, and you want to do that. Say, send me everything you've got. I'm going to review it. This is you talking to them. You're going to review their information, and you may eliminate 1 or 2 more based on what you've seen. And you want to be able to explain to them why you think they should hold off looking at those properties. But if you can get it to 5 properties, that's great. 6 is pretty good. 7 will be a stretch, all right? Then you have to make appointments to go look at all these properties. And when you're dealing with rentals, particularly those that are turnkey, this is one of the downsides of helping your clients buy turnkey properties. The downside is they're occupied, and scheduling showings can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes. But I trust you. I promise you, it is well worth it, all right? So in any case, you make your appointments, you go see the properties, you eliminate even further. Now you're looking at the properties on the inside, and you can talk to the tenants. You can ask the tenants questions. Okay, don't be afraid to ask them, hey, how long have you lived here? What's it like? How do you like it? What are your plans for the future? Do you think your rent's high? Do you think your rent's low? Would you recommend friends renting in this building, from this current landlord? If you have tenants, wealth them information, all right? And don't be afraid to talk to them and ask questions. Also, you can use this as an opportunity to validate some of the rents. You can say, hey, I understand, or you can ask them, what is it you're paying for this rental right now? And if they say, oh, I'm only paying $500 a month, and the listing had advertised $1,000 a month, you know you've got a potential issue. So I want to pause for a second, let you absorb what I just said there. What I'm saying is you can leverage the presence of tenants to further validate the properties. All right. Essentially, what you're doing is this: you should have your cash flow worksheet worked out. In the case of a property that needs to be rehabbed, you should have your MAO worksheet worked out too. And now you're able to go back and check your numbers and validate everything and confirm that you're accurate in your numbers, or modify them if necessary. That's what you're doing at this step. Okay. All right. Now, the final step is this. In this 12, well, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. The big picture is this. Once you've looked at the 6 properties, for example, and you've narrowed it down to 4 or 3 or 2, whatever the case is, you always tell your clients, you never say this. You never say, hey, that was a great day. I hope you enjoyed it. When you're ready to make a move, let me know. That is the worst mistake you can ever make, because you just shifted 100% of the control back in their hands. And they may call you, they may not call you, they may put it aside, and because the next day is a Saturday, and then they all of a sudden they put it aside again because it's Sunday. Then Monday comes, they got to go to work. Next thing you know, those good properties are being snatched up by other people. Okay, you've got to move fast. So here's what you do. All right, when you're done looking at the properties, you sit down with your clients, whether it's a Starbucks or on the hood of your car, or if you have a tailgate in the case of a truck, that's great. But go through the final list of properties and have them eliminate even more, and compare them side by side. Hey, which one of these could you live without? If you can buy all 4, that's great. But if you can only buy 1 or 2, let's figure out which 2 do we focus on. And you show them side by side, and they're going to tell you, I want to go with property A, or I will go with property B. And you throw away the other property. You ball it up in your hand and toss it, not on the ground, but in your car or in a trash bag or something. Okay, it's cathartic, and it gets them to see that property is going bye-bye. You're never going to look at it again. They're going to focus on the best of the best. You have them do it right there. Then what you do is just say, good, we're in good shape now. I want you to go home, review your notes, review your cost sheets, review your cash flow calculations, and I'm going to call you at 9 o'clock tonight, or whatever you want to do, 8 o'clock, something like that. You agree on a time to talk to them. And if you tell them, if you make changes to your sheets, that they email the sheets to you so you have them on your computer to look at it as you're going over it on the phone at 9 o'clock tonight. At 9 o'clock at night, you look at the final, pieces of information for the cost sheets, the cash flow sheets, the rehab sheets, whatever the case is. Could be for 1 or 2 or 3 properties. You're going to review those with your clients and help them determine which one they're going to make the offer on. They can make 3 of them, but only if they're qualified to make 3. Never make multiple offers just because your client wants to. Only make 1 offer at a time. And again, unless they're qualified for multiple properties, then you can make multiple offers. But in this case, assuming they can only buy 1, you pick the best one, you write up the offer, you give it to them literally that night. You put it on your computer, you email it to them, have them sign it and send it back to you that night with a scanned copy of their hand money check and proof of funds if they're getting a loan, or proof of cash if they're using a cash for the property. Okay, but that's the 12-step process that you go through, guys. The 12-step obviously is to make the offer. All right, when you do it in that order, when you do it in that fashion, you do it all literally, that at least the final 6 steps. That's how you get offers in on time, and that's how you get offers accepted. Okay, if you vary from this, if you let things drag out and you skip a day or you let a day go by, number 1, the good properties will be gone, and number 2 is your client's going to lose their inspiration. Okay, so you never ever leave the scene without having a plan going forward, like a 9 o'clock phone call or whatever the case is, and you get that offer in that night. That's how you get your offers accepted. Okay, let me take a quick pause and let you guys type in questions, and I'll check for questions. Let's go back here and see, because I think a couple of them came in. Okay, all right. Rhonda says, I'm laughing looking at your rental rates in SoCal. My daughter just rented a studio for $900. Yeah, I know. Rhonda, I of course spent, out of the last 8 months, I spent 8 weeks out there, and I've got friends and family all over California. And you're right. We can put in, maybe from time to time I'll put in different examples of different areas. And here's one from Margaret. Hi, Margaret. Margaret's saying for North Boston, 125,000, 150,000 per unit, renting for 1,500 to 2,000 per month. That's right on target. That's actually pretty good, Margaret. That's a good return, all right, especially for that area. All right, Cheryl says, or Sherry Joe, excuse me. Could you or your client request a tenant survey? Absolutely, you absolutely can. And matter of fact, Sherry, when your clients are buying properties that have 5 or more units, I recommend that you do what's called an estoppel letter. An estoppel letter is one that you can type up yourself, or your client may have one, that you send to the tenants ahead of time. It actually typically goes through the other agent. You give it to the agent, they send it to the tenants. The tenant sends it back to you directly. And you ask questions on there, like you do in a survey. What is your rent? How long have you been there? What's your security deposit? Absolutely, great technique. Okay, let's see. This next one is Elisa. Hi, Elisa. Elisa says, do you suggest working with experienced or somewhat experienced investors who already have their own formulas when it comes to coming up with an offer? For example, say they want to offer less than 30% of ARV because they are used to doing that. I know investors who have to decide what their offer price will be based on comps and ARVs. Yeah, good question. I generally like working with newer investors, Alyssa, because the ones who are already been in the game, they're used to treating us like a commodity. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Okay. Now, if you have a good investor who understands the business, he treats it like a business. Those guys are okay. I don't care if they own 100 units. Generally, I'm going to enjoy working with them because they're more business oriented, and they often will have their own cash flow calculators. However, when it comes to the offer itself, what I tell people is make the offer that's appropriate for that property based on the value, which is based on the rents. If they just go and arbitrarily offer 30% off, and it's arbitrary, that's going to cost you. That's going to cost them valuable opportunities, and it could cost you valuable reputation. And by the way, Alyssa, I know exactly who you are, and I'm so glad you're in the program. And I can't wait to see you in 6 months. And because I am coming back out there, by the way. I've got to teach for 2 more weeks in Southern California. But in any case, back to your question. What I would do, Alyssa, there's a great question because you can practice. You can do both ways. What you can say is, hey, Mr. Investor, let's do it your way this time. Next time, let's do it my way. All right, and let's compare the results, and you, the client, get to pick which method you like better. And you can work with them any way you want as long as you're comfortable and it's a respectful, profitable relationship for you. Okay, and that is an excellent question. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see. Alyssa says, makes sense. Thank you. You're very welcome. All right, hey, real quick, guys, I know we're getting short on time here, but I want to let you know next week we're going to go over wholesaling. How do you actually work with people who are signing the contract or selling the contract for a assignment fee or a wholesale fee? We'll go over that next week so you know how to go over that with your clients and how to get them set up to operate and perform correctly so that you're not wasting your time. They're making money and so are you. Okay, that's next week. And that'll be on the 17th, which is Tuesday, and I will be doing that from Huntsville, Alabama. All right? So I will see you guys next week. I appreciate you participating tonight and raising your questions. And I hope you took a lot of good notes. Make sure you review this again. And between now and next week, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. God bless you all, and I will see you next week. Okay? Bye-bye.